On this episode of AVWeek, selling VTC systems in a world of Zoom, getting help on big projects from manufacturers. And AVIXA says that the corporate and pro AV market will grow in the next 4 years. All that and more. Next on AVWeek.
The network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.
This is AVWeek, episode 363, recorded Friday, August 10th, 2018. Managing Expectations.
Support for AVNation is brought to you by
Sure, because every voice matters.
And by HD Base Tea.
This is AVWeek, your weekly wrap-up of audiovisual news and information. My name is Tim Albright. I am your host. With us to talk about the news and information we have gathered for this week, first and foremost, her name is Corey Schaefer, and she is from QSC. Welcome, ma'am.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Anytime. Also with us is Emil. Emil is a content creator and a fabulous AV professional, also part of the SDN9, and he is from Socialure. Pronounce your company again, please.
Socialure. Awesome.
Socialure. Thank you.
Glad to be here.
Thank you, sir. Last but not least, my buddy and pal and part of this whole AVNation crew, his name is Matt Scott. He has a residential and commercial AV innovation firm in London, Ontario, but he also hosts ResiWeek. How are you, sir?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Matt will also be part. He'll be the main thrust, the tip of the spear for our CDA coverage.
Tip of the spear.
I don't know. You'll be doing an awful lot of interviewing on.
We will. It'll be a blast. It'll be a blast. Looking forward to it.
All right. Let's kick this off here from our friends over at AVIXA. They released another one of these market reports. This one more into the corporate pro AV market. And according to their head of market research, Sean Wargo, quote unquote, what used to be a series of disconnected flagship conference rooms have become communication and collaboration points tied together with networks. What he's talking about is the growth. They're seeing growth in both the corporate, the pro AV side of corporate, specifically 1.5% annually between 2017 through 2022. 1.5% doesn't sound like a whole lot, except when you recognize how big that number really can get to. Matt, I want to actually start with you on this. When we get into talking about corporate and talking about the growth and stuff like that, does this ring true, not just for, Matt's in Canada, but he also has does some work in the US as well. Does this ring true from not only your clients, but also from the folks that you're talking to?
It really does. When my company first got into corporate was a bit of a small pie. If you were not, a Fortune 500, Fortune 100 company, you weren't doing that much stuff. Just because they weren't using that much technology. Now you walk into any facility, any corporate facility, and it's not uncommon to find, room scheduling systems, digital signage, entry systems, wayfinding, like the list goes on and on before you even get to those traditional conference rooms that you would normally attribute to that corporate environment. Everything we're seeing is pointing to this as far as the numbers that they're referencing. And I would almost question whether they're a little on the light side as far as how much they're saying this is growing. We're seeing it more and more every day, and we're seeing the trickle-down effect, which is, I really think, where some of this increase is really coming from. Is it's not just, again, those Fortune 100 companies that are heavily investing in this. It's even mom-and-pop operations that have 30 employees or 20 employees. Everyone is investing in technology in the corporate environment. It's huge.
Well, and Corey, I want to bring you on this from the QSC side as well. They talk about the increase in using the networks and connecting all these together. QSC obviously is a big fan of that, and you guys have done a lot of growth over the last 3 to 4 years in pushing folks into the network. Is this something where manufacturers are kind of making sure that their dealers are ready for this and have the right, not just vocabulary, but honestly the full understanding when they go into those meetings, so they can honestly talk intelligently and have conversations with the IT managers who they're going to be interfacing with.
Yeah, I mean, we're trying to make sure that a big part of what we're doing at QSD is educating the channel, because we're incredibly channel friendly. And I loved getting this report because I feel like Joe Pham, our CEO, is quite the visionary. And, we really shifted into the corporate sector only 3 years ago, because we introduced a box for the meeting room space in 2015 at Infocom. So we haven't been at, really at this level until just the last couple of years. And what I thought was compelling about this as well is, so it's not, yes, everything going on the network, also the need to have spaces that are for all kinds of employees, right? Because we have mobile employees, we have employees that come on site and need to collaborate, etc. So the trend is, I think, more collaboration. So to Matt's point, the digital signage, the scheduling, and all of that, and these small teams that have to support it, and these integrators that have to get things on the network. And honestly, this sector, I would agree with Matt that I feel like the size of the market growth, it was surprisingly low to what we're seeing at QSC. And it might, again, just be because we're new to the space. And so it's, so we're seeing it be great opportunity when we really weren't in it 5 years ago at the level we are today. But I see end users, they have incredibly aggressive timelines. We have companies doing consolidations, which means that they're also revamping all of their technology to either the company that acquired them, standards, and so on. I mean, there is just nothing but upside here. But I feel that on the channel part, Tim, the integrators have to speak this language of network. They have to, or they'll be purchased by maybe a network company. We're starting to see some of that stuff too.
Absolutely, we are. Absolutely, we are. I want to bring you in on this on a little slightly different angle. In the executive summary, it says, "quote unquote," both end users and providers of AV solutions tend to agree that the two biggest challenges in past engagements, which I like, are adherence to budget and keeping to timelines consistent with expectations. So timelines and budgets. In other words, we're looking at a discrepancy in project management and I guess accurate forecasting. Emil is one of the more popular, very busy digital artists in and around Vegas. He has to deal with timelines and budgets, so that's why I want to get your 2 cents on this. What can we do as an industry to get better at both project management and honestly more accurately budgeting?
So I think a lot of times clients, they will write stuff, they will make a project plan, get everything on paper. And obviously, when you're creating immense systems like this, there's always like unforeseen things that you deal with while you're deploying. And the main thing that we do to make sure that we stay in budget, stay in the timeline, is we kind of base our previous experience from previous deployments and say, hey, this looks great on paper, but maybe give yourself some time for this specific aspect. And it could be anything. Like there's so much, especially when you're working with IT now as well. There could be so many different small things that end up taking a big chunk of the time. And so the main thing that we try to do is make people aware of that, make people aware so that even if it does happen, then it's not a surprise, and then we can solve this as a team together. And then you work with the integrators, IT, and basically have a plan B ready as well.
So you're trying to set expectations up front so that they understand perhaps that the timeline's unrealistic. And
Yeah. I mean, we're always like, especially when here in Vegas, for example, the deployments, they have a specific deadline because it's like the delivery of the whole building. And I think this was also like some of Infocom mentioned in multiple talks, is that a lot of times the integrators and AV is brought on at a pretty late stadium when it comes to doing all this. So
no, I don't believe you. AV was called late to the game?
But I mean, I still think that's like something that's doable as long as people are aware. I mean, you must understand that it's not like your general building manager might not always be aware of the different options that are possible in AV. And I think it's our job to make them aware of the different options and different things, and also the different things that can happen. And I always say, like, well, let's at least try it and go for it, and have a plan B and a plan C so that you can quickly switch to those when needed.
Mm-hmm. Next story here comes to us from our friends over at AV Magazine. Hawaii, Huawei, Huawei. I don't know why I'm having a hard time pronouncing things this morning. They connected with, they got Harman, used Harman products to connect over 880,000 employees. From the article, quote unquote, to facilitate more efficient communication across its network of more than 180,000 employees. They hired IT specialist IntelliSmart Technology to install a complete Harman professional solution, AV solution, capable of streaming high-definition audio and video seamlessly throughout the facility. What obviously they're talking about there is Harman's AMX SVSI system. Actually, Emil, I want to come back to you on this, on the first question here. This is not a small project, right? And you're talking about, a very large facility, a very large deployment. Something like this, though, go back to the last talk, project management and making sure that everybody understands what needs to happen. Going into this, how do you get a handle on a deployment like this, and how do you, like you said, manage the customer's expectations?
So in this case, I think it's a very, very, very impressive project, especially when you talk about the numbers of employees that are using it. So there's a whole strategy that you have to do beforehand, and you basically make almost like a war plan where you set up all the different points, and also set up all the different possible pain points. And so that goes even beyond the plan B and C. That's like a whole timeline workflow, and you definitely need some amazing project managers to make sure that all the different teams work together. And I think that's the pre-work is almost more important than the actual deployment.
All right, Corey, from the manufacturer standpoint, most manufacturers, and I don't know this for a fact, but you can correct me on this, QSC probably has some sort of process where, I'm AVNation, AV service, and I say, hey, Corey, I have a job. It's 180. I got to do this large job. How do you guys support the dealers in something like this? Because, regardless of somebody's past, there are some jobs that people come across that are like, oh my gosh, this is a big fish for us. This is a leap for us. How do you guys help dealers kind of reel in these big fishes and take hold of these big projects?
We all need to approach it as partners, right? So they have to pull us in as soon as they get alerted to it, because to Emil's point, it's so much project management. So we need to be able, as a manufacturer, to look at, first of all, the overall scope of the job, the timeline of it, and then put in for demand planning, right? So exactly what products are they going to need, when are they going to need them, et cetera. And that's the biggest challenge we manufacturers have. And I was talking to an integrator this morning who said that, many projects they're seeing have aggressive timelines, and they're seeing more manufacturers than ever not have product available, right? So as we're, it's just this juggling act. So when we can approach it with this partner approach, so this huge project didn't just happen, in 90 days and say, hey, we're looking at it. So as soon as the integrator can make the manufacturers aware of it, and for everyone to approach it with this partnership in mind, it ensures that timelines can be met. We can all review the diagrams and make sure it's the best and most efficient design. And two things on this one that really jumped out at me was the fact that it was really an IT company doing the integration, right? So not your traditional AV team. And then secondly, the fact that they really use the power of the Harman brand. So when you read the article, it's every solution that they have. So when it's one source, right? So it's Harman, and then it's for the microphones, the speakers, the video, the control, all of that. It really helps them have much more control of the project, which, many of us manufacturers are trying to be that one-stop shop. And this was a beautiful example of the value and power of that.
No, manufacturers are starting to make other products to make sure that we all go to one place. Never happens. Ever.
It's the first time I've ever seen that.
Sarcasm, kids. Actually, there's one of my very good friend of mine who works for a manufacturer. And we were talking one day and I mentioned some product and he's like, we make that. I said, yeah, you make everything. What do you want? What you can't talk to, I can't talk to this person over here because you make everything. So,
yeah.
Anyway. Mr. Matt Scott, from a dealer standpoint, Corey makes a good point about bringing the manufacturer in early.
Mm-hmm.
But then how do you make the best use of that without nothing against manufacturers? They do want as much as they can get because they're making money. You're trying to make money, but there may be solutions that yes, they may make it, but it may not make sense. So how do you balance that?
That always comes down to, really, to Emil's point, the pre-planning side of it.
Okay.
When you have your initial meetings with your clients and you're looking at projects of this scale or, even smaller projects, you always have to look at the combination of, the solution you're trying to provide, the budget you're trying to solve, and the least amount of headaches involved. So if it's something where you can go to, manufacturer A and get 80% of your product and solve that solution with 80% coming from one supplier, that's fantastic. But if you as the integrator, really the people that are on the front lines deploying this and ultimately accountable for it, if you look at something and say, you know what, I know that, manufacturer A has 80% of this, but one of those lines I know is going to cause me headaches, problems, or issues. Not necessarily because it's a bad product, just because of the solution. It's up to you to realize and hopefully know that, and be comfortable really, that you can go to that manufacturer, loop them in and say, hey, I need 60% of what you have for this. I realize you have 80, but this, that other 20% that we're getting from you or could get from you is going to a different manufacturer.
Yeah, I think if you just partner and be straight up, everyone appreciates that.
You have to be honest with it. And, I had a meeting with a supplier yesterday and he was trying to sell me on one of his lines. And I'm like, you know what? We are locked in solid with this other manufacturer. I'm not going to waste your time. I respect you enough not to waste your time as you try and pitch me on something we're not going to sell. And when it comes to solutions, especially solutions of this magnitude, you have to be able to hold your own against any pushback from a manufacturer. And, maybe they will convince you that, they can provide as much of the solution as they want to. Maybe they can't. But if you, as the end user, is the one who's going to, as the integrator is going to be the one who is held accountable for the project, very rarely will an end user skip over the dealer or the integrator and go to the manufacturer and yell at the manufacturer. They're going to yell at the integrator. So you have to be comfortable and bold enough to stand your ground if, these kind of conversations come up. But at the end of the day, Corey hit it right on the head. You have to work those partnerships. And if it is a true partnership and if you are partnering with, people well and you have a good relationship, they'll understand that. If I come to Corey and tell her, we need part A, B, and C, but not D, D's going to somebody else, she's not going to, hopefully, get upset with me. She's going to respect that.
Right.
And I will say most will understand that.
And that's why I said, yeah, hopefully she'll understand that.
No, and Corey will.
Right, but just as the example.
I've heard stories, and you told me some stories. I've heard stories.
I have some.
Yeah.
I'm not going to get into them today. I don't want to be sued today, Tim.
I don't want you to paint this.
Tim, I'm not getting sued today.
Every manufacturer is hunky-dory and plays well with others because they simply don't.
Well, and that's specifically why I said you have to be bold enough to stand your ground.
Yeah. But because one ask I would have though as a manufacturer side is that for that to take a back seat and for first and foremost, whenever there are projects, especially of this magnitude, that every potential player be brought in, even if you're unsure what manufacturer you're going to use, right? Just everybody be brought in early, because the earlier everybody is brought in and if it's approached as a partnership, at the end of the day, going to be a much better product delivered.
Of course.
And everybody just has to agree that, it's only an opportunity. It's not a guarantee.
I was going to say,
right?
wouldn't you be sad though if you don't get it? I mean,
well, it's but again,
here's a $50 million project, Corey. Oh no, just kidding.
It's also though that fact that you, as the dealer, you have to make your potential partners aware that you have a lead on something of this scale, because otherwise, one, they're hopefully going to be able to look at you and be honest and say, yeah, we can supply that. If this comes to fruition, we can supply that. We can support that. If they can't, hopefully they'll tell you.
Right.
And if you've gone ahead and, we've run into this in House of Worship where we've spec product that is not obtainable within the timeline required. And if we had brought, that manufacturer on board early enough, as we were looking through our multiple suppliers and said, hey, we're looking at this project. We need this amount of, LED board, or we need whatever that product is or that solution is. If we'd brought them in early, they could have sat back and said, yeah, we're going to be like a 16-week lead time versus another manufacturer who might be 4. It's again, it really, Emil hit it right when he said that this is really the pre-planning is almost more important than not only the technology, but the end result. If you don't plan for it properly, it doesn't matter how good your partnerships are, how good anything is. I can be best friends with Corey, and that doesn't necessarily mean that their factories can pump something out 4 weeks earlier than they normally could. It just, at the end of the day, you have to pre-plan, you have to be bold, you have to keep your thumb on these kind of projects. Otherwise, they'll eat you alive, no matter how big you are.
Right.
All right. Final story here from our old buddy, Dan Newman from Futurum. He writes in Commercial Integrator, actually really good article about UCC. He writes, quote unquote, integrators have the opportunity to continue to offer tremendous value while building out a business model that means video conferencing and collaboration needs. What struck me about this article was actually the title, which is the question I'm actually going to ask all three of you. Corey, we'll start with you on this. Have FaceTime, Google Hangout, and Zoom made it hard to sell video conferencing?
So I also love the title, and this is exactly what I'm seeing. So I think it's hard. It makes it hard to sell your traditional hard codec video conferencing, absolutely. And this is a technology trend shift, and many end users have shifted to these easier soft codecs because every one of their users are using them in some way, as the article said, from FaceTime, Zoom, all of these things. We're using them every day in our lives. So we want to be able to use them in our offices. And so, but it creates a new opportunity, in my opinion, which is instead of having video conferencing rooms that are just set aside for that purpose, because that's how we used to see them. They're very high-end, expensive, etc. Soft codec is very inexpensive and super easy for the user. So now pulling those into those larger rooms where these quote Zoom rooms and these just having a laptop doesn't cover it, right? So these training rooms, these divisible rooms, these all hand spaces. So when you still want to keep the same platform, maybe it's Zoom, but Zoom doesn't offer all of the tools to do that big integration, but you should still be able to use the Zoom platform when you're doing an all hands meeting with your 180,000 employees, or when you're doing a training room and you need to divide it up, your users are familiar with the platform. And that just takes a huge headache off of the support for that end user. So just find ways now to integrate that in with all the other technology.
Yeah. Matt, same kind of question to you, whether it's in, obviously not a whole lot of video conferencing in residential, but in the commercial stuff that you do, right? Are these platforms making it harder to sell?
Yes and no. I'm going to take a Switzerland approach. They are. Yeah, you're welcome. Or a Canadian approach. How about that? It's, pretty close.
You have not been very nice here in the last week. So
no, we've been very loud. It's rare.
Yeah.
Or me personally or the country? What are you saying?
Well, you're always loud.
Exactly. I hang out with you a lot.
Wow.
You're welcome. So yes and no. The benefit that these products have afforded all of us as manufacturers, I'm assuming, and definitely as integrators, is that before, when you would walk into, I remember when we first started trying to sell Cisco telepresence, you would walk into a client and try to explain to them the concept of video conferencing and calling, and the majority of them had never experienced it. The flip side is now you walk into that larger space and you have your conversation about what they're using and how you can make it work in that room. And they look at it and you go, well, I just FaceTime from my phone, right? So we could just mirror that to the projector. It'll be fine. You now have to actually work harder to sell the benefit of your expertise and your company's expertise to know the proper solution, not necessarily the delivery method, but the proper solution for that space and for their work system. If you can figure that out and prove that you understand how they work and how they need to use a system, the platform doesn't matter, and you can very easily make that sale. The problem becomes is too often we either get hung up on, whether it's Google or Zoom or whatever, and we don't move our end users past, or we don't explain to them the drawbacks of trying to use, a single conference mic in a space that seats 20 people.
Yeah, the shortcomings of the platform.
Yeah. And the platforms are fantastic. Some of their auxiliary hardware doesn't fit all the spaces. And that's the biggest issue, is they look at it and go, well, I've got a $1,500 room over here that's my great huddle room. I'm sure I can use that in my executive boardroom that seats 32. It's properly positioning yourself again as the expert, but being able to articulate that information to your end user in a way that they understand.
I see that trend also where where they're sold on the platform or the particular room type for $1,500, but the end user is then trying to take that and put it as a one size fits all. And so it's just education. And I think the platform wouldn't want you to sell this solution in a room that it's not equipped for either, because it then makes the platform seem like it's not a good fit.
No, not at all. And, I was watching Twitter the other day when this article first came out, and there was a lot of buzz about it from some of our friends in the industry. And, at the end of the day, Zoom, just to use that because we're using it right now as the example, they definitely do not want you to use, again, a small huddle space in an all hands space, because then it gives the impression that their equipment sucks.
Right.
And they want the best experience.
They were at Infocom this year as an exhibitor, and prior to it, they actually hosted an event for integration partners. Yeah. So, I think they really see the value of the integrator. And then at Zoomtopia, they've got one, they do this event called Zoomtopia, and they're spending a day talking about integration into other room types.
Yeah. And I think sometimes one of the things that you have to do as an integrator when you have that project, sorry to cut you off, Tim, is to go in and if someone, some local IT manager or whoever in that space is making a decision to say, hey, we're going to take this huddle space and put it into a large environment, let them do it. Let them do it for a month. Let them do it for 6 months, and then schedule a meeting, come back and talk to them about their experience. Maybe they're happy with it. And if they are, then great. No complaints. But 9 times out of 10, they're going to have some pain points. They're going to have some issues that you can then address. And then it's not so much of, oh, no, you can't do that. It's more of so it didn't work. Let's look at some options to make this work better.
Yeah. I mean, I want to bring on this because what we're doing is we're moving from hardware to software, right?
Yeah, exactly.
How do you migrate both as a company and as a team as your clients are moving that way?
Well, I think the main thing is that it's moving more towards experiences as well. So I think when we're talking about all these different video conferencing integrations, you also have the ability to brand, to do different white label, gray label options. But again, same what Matt and Corey also mentioned, has a lot to do with the different integrations. Nowadays, you can use the different platforms and link them together. You can use different integrations and make them all work together. And I think that's like a very good point. Like with these video conferencing systems, you can you can basically tie them all together, and even things that might not work in a large scale. you can set them up in a way where the integration does work in a large scale. And I think that's a big switch. And I think it has everything to do with moving forward with the technology.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so they're spending money on other things too. So maybe it's not just on the traditional codec, and now they're able to spend money on other things.
Well,
you had that example of using FaceTime and then putting it on a projector, and immediately another thing is that it's not seamless. Everything you want to create this seamless experience. So when you do a big video conference with maybe with your customers or with a large group, you want it to be a pleasant experience, and I think that's. It's very it's hard to describe that in technology terms, but I think there's a very, very big impact on how you are going to make your huddle room or make your conference room. And I think now that you have these solutions, it becomes easier to think more about that.
But I think that's I think you hit on something there, Emil. You don't explain it in technology terms. Yeah. Right. I think that's the migration that we as an industry have to get to, is that we stop explaining it in technology terms. We stop explaining it with this box and that box, and go back to what AVIXA has asked us to do for the last 3 to 4 years, and continue to talk about the experience, continue to talk about the customer, continue to talk about how they interact with this and how they feel, honestly, at the end of the experience with our technology. So. All right, guys, that's going to do it for us. Thank you all so much. Mr. Matt D. Scott, thank you, sir.
Thank you. Sorry for talking over you.
Oh, wait. How do people find you?
Sorry, not sorry. You can find me at Matt D. Scott on Twitter and every other social platform. You can find me at CD. You can find me at AVNation, or you can find me at OmegaAudioVideo.com.
All right, very good. Ms. Corey Schaefer, thank you, ma'am, as always.
Hey, thanks for having me. You can find me at Corey Schaefer on Twitter, Corey Schaefer LinkedIn, Corey.Schaefer at QSC. You just find me.
Find her. She's pretty awesome. Also, she'll probably be at the. Are you going to the Women of AVIXA event in Southern California?
I'm not, because I'm actually going on a safari.
Never mind. That is a perfectly acceptable excuse. But there is a Women in AVIXA event coming up in Southern California.
Yeah, the 23rd of August at Mad Systems. It's going to be an awesome event.
Well, and I just found out that they're doing one in Chicago, and I'm kind of excited about that because I'm going to jump on the train and head north.
Awesome.
All right, Emil, thank you, sir, as always.
Thank you.
And how do people get a hold of you?
You can find me on Twitter at Socialer or at Escapation. And as far as Socialer, you can find it Facebook at Socialer, Instagram at Socialer, and so on. Or you can try to Google my name.
I'll point out that I've just referred to him as Emil. Go ahead and pronounce your last name, sir.
Emil van de Koevering.
Thank you very much. All right. My name is Tom Albright. Don't follow me, because at this point, the Bears are already out of the playoffs. But go by the website, if you would, please, AVNation.tv. AVNation.tv. You will find this program and a host of others. Also, while you're there, please check out our underwriter section. These are the folks who help us financially, to support us and let us do AV Week and Resi Week, Matt's show, and all the other stuff. And in about 3 weeks' time, they'll help us go to San Diego and bring you all that is new and exciting in the world of residential AV at CD Expo. So check that out, all that and more at AVNation.tv, AVNation.tv. Thanks so much for listening. Thank you so much for watching. That's all the time we have for AV Week.